Welcome into the latest episode of Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara, joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. We are here to preview Oregon's matchup against Virginia at Autzen Stadium, coming up a 7:30 kickoff on ESPN. National game, Pac-12, ACC. It just hasn't really gotten a lot of traction this week, though, in terms of a game that people are talking about.
Yeah, Virginia coming in, I think they're going through kind of a rebuilding phase, new coach, drop a game to Richmond of the FCS last week. Ducks play okay against Davis, more than well enough to do the job, but certainly nothing overwhelming. So it's kind of a blah week nationally on the college football schedule, which I think was going to happen coming off, a week one that had so many amazing games. But not getting a ton of traction perhaps, but you're in that 7:30 slot. I know for some people, particularly those back east, including the Virginia Cavaliers fans, I imagine, it's going to be a late one. On the other hand, a lot of eyeballs will end up being on this game because it is in that national window, like you say.
Yeah, that's one of the things that it's sort of a catch-22 when you have the late game. I've always contended from a branding standpoint, you want to be in front of as many people as you can be, and when you are that late game, especially on the East Coast, every restaurant, every bar in every major city is going to have this game on. So there are some implications just in terms of maybe picking up a little bit of traction from this for one of these teams. Hopefully, from Oregon's standpoint, it's the Ducks. But it's really the second straight game that Oregon has to start the season where it's kind of a no-win situation for the Ducks. They're expected to win and win big, and anything less than that is kind of I don't want to say a disappointment, but just sort of a shoulder shrug in anticipation for Nebraska. Now, Mark Helfrich has preached post-practice this week about focusing just one game at a time. He doesn't want to hear anybody talking about any game other than the next one in front of this team, and that's got to be kind of difficult.
Yeah, I think in terms of perception, for sure it is. This is a tough one. It may feel like a no-win situation, but you look internally, as far as the staff's concerned, the players are concerned, the chance to get this young offensive line more experience, the chance for Dakota Prukop to settle in a little bit more and work on getting the offensive tempo up, the chance for Brady Hoke's new defense to play another game in that system, and for Troy Dye to see if he can follow up on his amazing opening game. There's so many, small victories like that to try to win in a matchup like this, and continue building momentum as you get into, not just that Nebraska game, but the conference schedule looms even larger farther down the road. There's weeks until then, but only a couple opportunities to get better. So this is a huge opportunity to do that for a lot of young, inexperienced guys.
Some names for Oregon fans to keep an eye on for Virginia in this one. As Rob mentioned, they're coming off of a season-opening loss against an FCS opponent. They lost to the Richmond Spiders, so definitely I'm sure that stung. Losing at home to an FCS team, an in-state FCS team at that, would probably be equivalent to the Ducks losing to a Portland State, to give you a little bit of a background there. In that game, however, they did have some positive performances. Ben Kurt, making his first career start at quarterback. He's a transfer from East Carolina. Played very well, 26 of 34, 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. A lot of that came late in the game as Virginia was kind of chasing this one throughout. But a good debut for him. He's somebody that the Oregon defense has been trying to prepare for. He's a kind of a dual threat guy. He didn't run for a ton against Richmond, but probably the way that game unfolded dictated that he would be more of a passer in this one. And then Olamide Zaccheaus. Olamide Zaccheaus. They call him Oz. I wonder why.
Let's stick with that.
Yeah, so keep an eye on him. Running back / wide receiver. Probably somebody similar to like a Taj Griffin in terms of role. A guy that can line up in the backfield, but also is going to go out wide quite a bit. He had 5 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. He was suspended for the first half of Virginia's game, so all of those stats coming in the second half. He's a playmaker on offense to watch out for. And then they really don't have a lot of veteran presence on either side of the ball, but defensively, Quinn Blanding is a free safety who's got a ton of starts, 25 career starts, and is kind of the rock for their defense, so somebody to look at there. For Oregon in this one, we saw Dakota Prukop make his debut. His numbers were good. He was pretty critical of his performance afterward, but if you look at his stat line, it was pretty solid for a debut. Dakota with over 270 yards passing. He ran the ball 11 times. Royce Freeman never really got going a whole lot. He only had 13 touches in the game, and that'll be something that it'll be curious to see how this game unfolds, and then will that dictate the workload that Royce gets, or will the Ducks just feed Royce to kind of get him back into the flow of the offense a little bit more?
Yeah, I would definitely expect him to get more work. I mean, if he doesn't get between 15 and 20 carries, I'd be really surprised, almost regardless of how the game develops. He's a guy who in practice, you can get more reps for Kenai Benoit, Tony Brooks-James, Taj Griffin, those younger guys, and make sure they're up on the game plan, make sure they're prepared. Royce knows what Oregon's doing at this point, but you want some game reps under your belt again as you get into the meat of the schedule. So I would certainly see him look to see him get a much larger workload for Dakota Prukop. Just a little quicker decisions that show he's a little more comfortable. There was times when his first read might have been open last week, and he just didn't want to quite pull the trigger. And he's an effective runner. I think half his carries either went for first downs or touchdowns. So you can't argue with his confidence, his ability as a runner. But just looking a little a step more comfortable, a step more confident. Running the tempo of the offense. Revving that just a notch or two higher as well.
I think it's interesting because Prukop did not turn the ball over in the first game. You want a caretaker for the offense. The coaching staff has preached this for years. They really, one of the things that made Dakota stand out in the whole process leading up to the season to earn the top spot was the fact that he was able to take care of the football so well. You could almost argue, though, that maybe you don't want to see him take chances, but he was almost too conservative maybe at times in the opener.
Yeah, and that's why I say, just a little bit quicker decisions. I think he's always going to not want to make mistakes, and you can't fault that thinking. But there's a nuanced little gray area between the two, between not being too risky, but also being a little more emphatic in your decision making and your playmaking ability. That again, coming out, it was his first game, first time really running the show against a ton of pressure, a ton of blitzing that UC Davis brought. You definitely expect him to be a lot more comfortable week 2 and just show another step in his progression.
He was able to spread the ball around to several receivers. 3 different receivers caught touchdown passes in the opener. We talked about it a lot in the recap of last week, but the new offensive line for Oregon featured 4 redshirt freshmen along the front, and those guys all have a game under their belt. It's possible that Tyrell Crosby comes back and joins the fold. I don't know how much, if he does play, how much he'll be utilized, but that would give Oregon a little bit more veteran presence along with Cameron Hunt. But just to see how that group kind of responds and then it comes into this week after really playing in their first college game for so many of them last week.
Yeah, I'd really like to see the young guys get a lot of run. I mean, again, I think just like with Prukop, the more reps those guys can get in games, the better. And then a guy like Crosby, say he is available, you still want to be careful. In his first game, getting back into it after missing, is he going to be ready to take on a full workload? Regardless, I want to see those young guys get a ton of reps. We know what Tyrell Crosby can do. We know he can handle himself against elite competition. I want to see Brady Aiello, Zach Morgan, even though he's a veteran guy, new to this system, getting a ton of reps. Calvin Throckmorton, all those guys. So really, another chance for valuable seasoning for those guys.
We'll wrap up with the defense. Troy Dye was the Pac-12 Player of the Week, true freshman. First true freshman Oregon has ever had that was Pac-12 Player of the Week, and we believe he's the first true freshman to start the opener at linebacker since the 70s at the earliest, based on the sort of you go back past 1990 in our record keeping here, and
blow the dust off some
exactly.
of them.
So it's been tough to sort of dial in all of his accolades for that first week, but his play speaks for itself. But now the opposition is going to be like, oh my, 35. Now they're going to have to worry about him, and that might open some things up for some of the other young defensive guys.
Yeah, if they're having to slide a tight end over there to provide help to a tackle on Troy Dye, or feel like they need to leave their back end for the sake of protection. That's going to help the secondary, or that's going to help the other interior linemen that are trying to get pressure on the quarterback. This is an interesting matchup. I think the Oregon secondary is going to be stressed. I think the safeties did not have a great game last week. I think Reggie Daniels, Tyree Robinson, those guys are highly motivated to improve and be better. We talked to Reggie Daniels earlier this week. He said his coverage skills have really been a point of emphasis for him coming off of last year. He's the nickel guy in, whether he's, starting or second team defensively, he slides down and becomes the nickel coverage guy in the nickel defense. And so he's asked to run with guys and cover them. And, you saw a weird play last week where a guy got a step on him because Jalen Jelks had dropped back off the line, and Jalen and Reggie got their feet tangled and allowed a guy to get a step on Reggie. Those are the sort of things you'd like to think that game 2, some of those timing issues have been worked out. But it's going to stress a guy like Reggie and Brendan Schooler, some other reserve defensive players that might need to play a little bit more when you go into nickel and even dime packages to deal with this offense and how much that Virginia may want to throw it.
Your Thursday practice report talked about tackling and how, at least according to one website that breaks down each game, the Ducks missed just 4 tackles in the opener, which is a marked improvement over several games last year. This will be a good test. I think the fact that the quarterback for Virginia appears to be legit is a good thing for this defense, because they're going to be tested in all phases, and really when you do have some young guys in the linebacking core and in the secondary, that's only going to be a positive down the line. Obviously, we know in the Pac-12 you've got a really good quarterback pretty much every week that you're going to have to face. So this will be a chance for them as well to go at it against a ACC level quarterback.
4 missed tackles, by 4 different guys. So it's not like there was one hole. There was one guy that was missing tackles or some weak spot that was exposed. Everybody was pretty fundamentally sound. Troy Dye leading the way in yet another category that way. He had no missed tackles in that game. I mean, you saw him wrap up the Davis quarterback in the open field. To see a freshman setting the tone that way and showing that level of soundness right off the bat was really impressive, and something you obviously want to see continue.
I think also Troy Dye's play might give the coaching staff a little bit of confidence in playing some of the other young guys that they're very high on. They knew they liked what they saw from Troy Dye in camp, and he showed it in the game. And there's a few other guys I know that they're very high on that may not have gotten as many reps in that opener that I think we'll see a little bit more playing time from in this one. We'll be back to wrap it all up. Hopefully it's good news, and it'll be a busy week around Eugene next week after this one's over, as the Ducks prepare for their final non-conference game. That'll be at Nebraska, and then it's right into Pac-12 play. So until next time, for Rob Mosley, I'm Andy McNamara. Go Ducks.